Hey, Isram, and anyone else who's watching. So I just wanted to kind of answer some of the questions that were posted to me and see if I can help clarify a few questions. So some of those questions were, the base coat of the model, like your primer versus your base coat. Primers typically come in one of three colors. It's either black, gray, or white. You can buy colored primers if you're going to predominantly do a color or predominantly use one color or another. You don't necessarily have to use those. It'll save you a little bit of time in making coats and stuff on the model. The color that you prime with, the color that you prime with does affect the look of the model. For example, this guy, oops, there we go. This guy's primed in black. And because he's primed in black, all the colors I'm going to provide on the model are going to be a little bit more muted, and it's going to have more shadow-like effects on the model when I paint him. It's okay for what I wanted it to do, because I do want those really dark shadows. But just keep in mind that a black primer is going to absorb a lot of color. It's going to take a lot of color to get very vibrant, bold colors. So I recommend black undercoats when you're trying to paint something and you want it kind of muted, or you want the colors to be a little softer and a little bit more muted. Typically, I don't use a lot of black undercoats, and most people who have been painting for a while typically don't use a lot of black undercoats because um, because it does tend to mute the colors out a lot. And typically, when you're painting something, you want the colors to show through. That's why you're painting it. So a lot of people do like black undercoat. A lot of professionals use black undercoats. It's a personal preference kind of thing. Um, but the color that you prime with will affect the colors that you put on the model. Now, with that being said, just because this guy has a black undercoat doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get bold, vibrant colors on him. You absolutely can. It's just going to take you longer, and it's probably going to take a few more layers of color to get that effect off of him because the black's going to soak up a lot of the color. So you can do it. You're just going to have to be patient, especially if you have like really vibrant colors. But if you're using like lots of metallics and lots of darker colors, then a black undercoat tends to work really well because the black undercoat gives those darker colors a nice palette to blend against, and it gives the metallics a nice, solid, crisp background to be able to work against. So it's actually a pretty neat thing. The next color is gray. Gray primer. This guy's been primed for a while. He was a used model when I got him, and he's pretty banged up. But this unit of Black 13th they were primed in gray. I didn't prime them. Typically, gray primer is kind of that middle ground. A lot of people use gray primer when they want like very natural earth tones to be very strong on the model. But they're not necessarily looking for the extremely bright colors or the extremely dark colors. I know a lot of people who use gray primers to do things like undercoat and provide the foundation for models that are going to have like blues, pinks, light reds, lighter purples. A lot of those mid-tone, earth tone colors are going to be they're going to show up really well against a gray undercoat, but you're not going to have those extremely peaking, vibrant brights that you would with white. With that being said, you can make those colors become extremely peaking and extremely vibrant, and you can do that with primer, or you can do that with thin down coats, the same as you can with black, because the gray is naturally lighter in tone than the black. You actually get that effect much quicker off of gray. So I know a lot of people who use it because they like having the flexibility of being able to have semi-muted colors, or if I really want to make something jump, like then a couple more coats and it'll jump. So it doesn't take as much work off of a gray base as it does a black to make colors super vibrant. The next color for primer really is white. This technically is Vallejo's Model Air Gray, but in my mind, this is a white primer because it pretty much is white. And you can see, like you look at it, like that primer is very, very consistent. It coats it very, very evenly and smooth. And a white primer typically gets you the best color saturation that you can get wow, I need to fix that stuff. It can get you typically the best color saturation that you're going to get. The downside to white primer, every part of the model must be coated. You don't have natural blacks or grays to create shadows for you, so you have to create those shadows. Now for me, I actually like that because I feel like shadows are a great place to get really subtle colors in, and you can add a lot more color to the model in the shadows. But if you're just starting off, or quite frankly, if you just, I know a lot of experienced painters who make me look like a 3-year-old with finger paint, and they use black primer on a lot of stuff they play on the tabletop because they just don't want to spend 6 months working on a model. It's just, they have more stuff to do with their time. So white has its value. It's not, you know, all three priming colors really have their advantages. The next question that was brought up is, you know, what kind of primer do I use? Well, there's a couple different kind of primers we have. Like there's some Vallejo model right there. That's surface primer. That's Vallejo surface primer. That's the white that's actually gray that's actually a white. Excuse me. That's that color, and a lot of people use those. Quite frankly, if you don't have an airbrush, if you're just priming, just literally priming out of the tank, then you know what, or priming right out of the box, then you know what, a can of Krylon works really well. Krylon has a brand of primer that is both it is a gray coat and a primer all in one, and it's kind of a darker gray, and they also have it in black. It comes with an angular nozzle. It sprays extremely smoothly. It's actually a really good primer. I've used it on a lot of models. It's not like your garden variety Krylon. Like a standard can of Krylon spray paint is like 99 cents. This stuff's like $4 or $5 a can. But at $4 or $5 a can, you're going to get a lot, and I mean a lot of models primered with that can of primer. So I wouldn't worry about the value or the efficiency in it. So the next question was, you know, what priming versus base coat. So I hope that kind of answers the questions about like what really affects what in terms of like the colors. The next one is using a wash. So how do you use a wash? Well, a lot of people, you know, a lot of people will just go out and they'll just buy a wash, right? So here are some washes on the market. Like this is an Armor wash. It's actually really, really neat. This is a strong tone. This is, and I talked about these earlier, these are Army Painter. You'll probably end up ordering these online. There aren't a lot of stores that carry a lot of Army Painter products, but the Army Painter products are actually very, very good for a wash. The thing is a lot of people think that in order to make a wash, you just have to thin down paint an awful lot. And that's true, you do, but you can't thin it down with water to make a wash. The thing about acrylic